Hey guys, so kind of midwinter update, you might say. It's cold here. It's been like in the 30s most of the day, and almost freezing at night, which is unusual here. And the houses and stuff, they really aren't built for it. You don't get those super solid structures, and the heating in Japan is not that great, so you really feel it. Anyways, what's happening? Let's see. The school's going pretty good. There's been a little bit of turnover, but nothing I can't handle. Um, sometimes, uh, sometimes it can be a good thing, if the students who are leaving are doing so for legit reasons. Usually, it's because they're starting a new type of school, like kindergarten to elementary or elementary to junior high, etc. And oftentimes they'll need to change their focus, or their school will be so far away that it just doesn't make sense to keep coming here. And either way, change can be good. Some changes I'm thinking about for the school are probably going to be not teaching any students younger than 4. I'd like to avoid that in the future. It's very time consuming and takes a lot of energy, and it's just, I don't know, I don't really feel it's that valuable. And it's also a little bit humiliating, like trying to get a kid to say the name of a color for 40 minutes. So that'll free some things up. The new university schedule for next year is looking pretty good, much better than this year and last. So that'll be a nice pick me up. I might actually be able to save money this year. And also a lot of saving involves not using. But I've been doing my research, and the thing is about saving money is that if you already have a big, large income, say, for me, a large income would be like $10,000 a month. If you have something like that, saving money can actually benefit you. But if you're anywhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 grand a month, um, and you have the ambition, from what I've read and heard, it's actually smarter to use your capital to find a way to leverage your income and then start saving, So it does make sense when you think about it. You can save and save and save and skimp and kind of live very frugally for a long time and maybe have some savings at the end of it all. Or you can use that same intensity you would for saving and living frugally to look for ways to scale business ideas. And then, hopefully they are scalable. Because the one trick about starting a business is if it's not scalable, um, meaning that if you can't hire people to replace yourself and eventually step back from the front line, so to speak, um, you could potentially make more money. Well, absolutely, I would say, especially in English teaching. Give me a break. But you're still going to be doing the majority of the work. Here I am 5 years down the road. I'm still doing essentially all the work for my school, with the exception of maybe looking over my tax paperwork and stamping it, which is about what my tax agent does. I organize everything. So my point is, yeah, it's good to save, but also you need to think about how are you really using your money, and things like running ad campaigns, creating courses, starting new businesses. Those can blow saving whatever you can on a small salary completely out of the water. But then again, you're almost completely guaranteed to fail and fail and fail at business until you succeed. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's definitely not for everybody. I have an entrepreneurial friend I've mentioned here who has seen the highs and lows of business inside and out, but his wife is much more conservative, very typical traditional Japanese, where they would prefer to have a fixed income, a fixed monthly salary, and then budget their lives around that. A lot of people are like that, but that comes right back to the situation where it's like, well, you really have to kind of stretch and live frugally and save like crazy, and essentially be very conservative to maybe have something to show for it. So anyways, so I've been mentioning in a few videos about starting some kind of a web design course, and I've made pretty good progress toward that. I've essentially finished designing the course. The curriculum is about a 4,000 word long document, broken it down into 13 lessons of 2.5 hours each. And I'm working on the pricing structure still. I've been doing my research. A lot of places around are really, really expensive. There's two factors I can't really know from my position. One is how busy they are. It may be that they only have a few students, and then the other is the quality of their instruction. And I frankly, I don't want to spend anywhere from $800 to $5,000 to find out. A bigger business might be able to do that. But the main advantage they have is a brand and a location. That's kind of the missing link for me right now, is finding a place that's presentable with parking and people can connect to the internet reliably. There's a few rental spaces around, but some of them are just like exorbitantly expensive, like 40-50 bucks an hour for a room that's probably the size of the inside of a bus. And then, so there's some logistics to be worked out there, but I feel like it's a good business idea for a couple of reasons. One is that the course is designed to finish with people having their own website that's live online via a hosting service that I am kind of overseeing. So over the years, that would build into recurring income. It would be once every 3 years you get a big hit where everyone renews their accounts, ideally, unless they want to go somewhere else, which could happen. But I mean, the average person, once you've got it all set up, it's kind of like changing phone companies. Like sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but generally you don't, unless you get really frustrated or someone offers a much better deal. And then also in the process of teaching people on site, you could network and make connections and establish a reputation as someone who knows the industry, and that could result in future client work, where one of your students might start up a conversation and they run into someone and they say, yeah, they're looking for a website, but I don't really have the time, or I don't have the confidence, or I can't because I work for a company, and Japanese companies don't like people make money on the side. Can you help them? And stuff like that. And it's just a kind of cascading effect where you're helping people learn new skills, they're helping you by networking, potentially referring you further business, either in the form of future students or future clientele, and that helps you build a portfolio and kind of iterates on your teaching process. And throughout all of this, your ability as a developer is also naturally increasing. It's just a natural human thing that the more time you spend doing something and absorbed in it, especially if it's something you enjoy, the better you're going to get at it. But there's kind of a catch, because you need kind of a target. I noticed this with Japanese. If you just study Japanese for Japanese's sake, you can improve, but it's much more effective if you're studying it to actually do something with it. In my case, I had a martial arts teacher. This is really ironic because, the typical white guy coming to Japan, back to the East effectively. My teacher was from China, but he wanted me to teach this martial art in Japan. And I was lucky, I guess, in a sense, because the martial art involved a lot of theory. You had to have a very deep understanding of the theory, which required quite a bit of explanation and contemplation to kind of integrate. So I would focus on how to explain this in Japanese, and having that kind of target beyond the medium of the language, it had a weird effect of kind of almost creating this vacuum where the language structures and vocabulary and everything I needed to know were kind of pulled into place by this desire to be able to use the language for something. So I'm finding it's the same with software development. I just finished my first ever website working for a client who's going to use it professionally, and It took way too much work in the end, and really wasn't a lot of money, but it helped me refine my process. And that's just how it is. It's very iterative, everything in our life is. And eventually, the changes between iterations become so small that we don't really notice them anymore, and it's effectively normal. We can see that with things like learning to walk or eat or ride a bicycle. It's just kind of, you don't think about it anymore. But there was a time where the difference between your first day of practice and your second was monumental. So that's where I'm at now. My entrepreneurial friend has been kind of feeling out this new school that's opening in his area, and he's made inroads. Excuse me. Having to do with designing and presenting a 5-year course in a kind of software development. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I could definitely do a write-up, but we're going to be collaborating and trying to come up with something that would result in a 5-year contract, the details of which are right now at this point extremely vague. So I don't really know how much of a time commitment it would be, the teaching aspect at least, and what the compensation would be. And those are really crucial. So for the time being, I'm kind of in a holding pattern. I want to finish up the website I've built for this course and maybe run just some really simple paid-per-click advertising campaigns in the immediate area, probably no further away than 15 kilometers from my school, just to see what kind of feedback there is in regard to this course. If I can get really just 5 people who are interested and want to sign up and give me their money, that would be ideal. That would be enough. That would make it for a pretty decent hourly rate and make it worth it. At this point, it might sound a little bit arrogant, but I don't want to invest time anymore into something that I'm not 100% sure won't have any kind of financial return if it's a business venture. I went through that when I started my school, and at this point I feel like starting any kind of side venture should be easier than what I went through starting my school, because the income is better now, and you can start with an MVP, right? Minimum viable product, and you can iterate on that instead of taking this massive risk and remodeling a space and taking out loans and quitting your job. Instead of doing that, you can develop a product that's minimal, but viable, as they say, minimum viable product, and iterate on that. And as that grows, hopefully that can actually supersede whatever you're doing now, without all the hardship and the risk and the stress, which is a much better approach, I think. It's not something I really had the luxury of trying before, but now that I'm actually entering a realm of skill that's actually valuable, I'm not doing what everyone else is doing, like trying to sell the same thing on Amazon, or giving content to cryptocurrency or some kind of MLM campaign. You're selling something that can't be replaced, that's unique, and is most importantly dependent on what's in your head. That's often overlooked. So for example, if you have a contract with a company or a factory in China for a product that you've designed, while it may have taken a lot of research and thought and planning to come up with the design, the fact is that anybody can copy it, or they can come up with something that's close enough but different enough from your patent to basically leapfrog you and become your competitor almost right away. But if you're selling something that's in your head, that's a skill that's based on something you've acquired over time and is difficult and not something someone can just say copy, because it involves real-time feedback with people and the ability to make corrections and to have the insight, on site, so to speak, in the moment, then that's a really, really valuable thing to have. And I think that's probably why English teaching is comparatively such a good income here is because a lot of local Japanese people don't have that natural ability in English to make the types of corrections and to have the types of insight that really make a difference in your study, even if you're studying something really basic. There's a big difference between a native speaker who's, who understands the language and the structure of it and can explain it well enough to make a difference. Because not every native speaker can do that. I mean, most people who've never taught English, especially, when it comes to difficult concepts in their language, it would be very difficult for them to explain it effectively. So my point is that if you do have a skill that's immaterial, something mental, an ability in language or software development, for example, or mathematics or something like that, that's something that's very, very difficult to copy, but it's very, very valuable in terms of the feedback you can give people and the time they can save and the struggle, because there's a combination of time and struggle that equals burnout, and that's what people pay for really in the end. They're trying to avoid that burnout. They're trying to save themselves time and pain in order to acquire a useful skill. So hopefully this will work out. We'll see. You never know. That's the thing with business. Young guys on their bikes. Generally, they're pretty harmless. Anyways, with business, you never know. You don't know until you're open and you're in contact with the market. So that's why another reason why it's a really, really good idea to have an MVP. So even if it completely flops, you're only out, a little bit, instead of having wagered your entire livelihood and ending up in debt with no income. It's just horrible to contemplate. So I was lucky with my school. I stuck with it long enough. Conditions were right enough that I was able to succeed. But even now, I'm completely dependent on the kindness of strangers for the most part. So it's good to diversify, and that's what I plan to do. So that's the update for February 7th, 2020.